really got to try on that left-hand side. What happened?
Oh, but I've gone up and over and bloody head over biscuit. It wasn't enough stability there for myself, but no, I was busting for a bit of meat this game. It didn't seem to work out.
Hello, cheers, and welcome to the Scrum of the Earth podcast, the weekly show for news, reviews, great interviews, and so much more, all about the world of rugby. My name is David Lawrence. I'm an American rugby fan who follows the game wherever I can find it all over the globe. If you'd like to get in touch, I'm on Blue Sky @ofscrum, and you can always drop an email to thescrumoftheearth@gmail.com. Well, I'm very pleased to announce today is a special bonus episode and announce the return of the one and only Alice Soper. Alice, kia ora, welcome back. How the heck are you?
Oh, kia ora. Oh, thank you so much for having me, David. I'm doing well. This is the day that team lists come out for Super Rugby Aupiki, so there's always like a pacing that goes on until 5 p.m. when they all drop, and then it's all on until the weekend.
On your show, let's just start with that. The first thing I want to mention is you have a new show. It's called Full Credit. It's great. I've been on board since the beginning. What can you tell us about it, and where can people find you?
Yeah, cool. So, yes, me and lovely Liz Elder, who you might know as the former captain of the Black Ferns, basically got sick of talking to each other in our DMs and thought we should be doing this on microphones. Plus, David, you're lovely, but I kept on guest appearing on other people's podcasts, and I thought maybe I should do this myself. Had obviously previously hosted a podcast for women's sports, and we won a medal for that. We were the best sports talk podcast in New Zealand last year. So I thought, why not put all that energy and attention on my favorite thing, which is women's rugby. So Full Credit is there to give just that to women in the game, because unfortunately still we struggle to get any type of proper in-depth analysis, discussion, unpack, really focusing in on our part of the game, particularly in this year of all years, when it's about to be a massive one, obviously, with the World Cup coming up. So we knew we wanted to start with Super Rugby Aupiki because it's a competition that unfortunately still doesn't get enough reach around the world. Sure. You can only, if you're unfortunately listening to us in the US, it's only the highlight packages that pop up on the All Blacks YouTube channel. They still haven't got the broadcast rights beyond Australia. So all of this, we're like, this is where the shaking up is happening for a lot of the Blackfern storylines that will come out of it. So we had to start there. But unlucky for everyone, or perhaps lucky, we'll no doubt continue to pick up and keep running with it, because Les and I have quickly found out we're never going to have run out of things to talk about. So we will be planning to continue this into the coverage of the Pacific 4 series, which, just around the corner now.
Oh, dang it. I didn't even put that on my list of upcoming things. I knew I was missing something. I was staring at my upcoming graphic, and I was like, I wanted to mention, by the way, about your show, when you and Liz do your top 15 of the week, like, it's a great bit. It seems super simple, but the way, like, as a listener, the way it comes across is like a quiz. So you're like, okay, who's your blindside flanker of the week? And I sometimes I'm pausing it like, okay, I'm going to go with this. And then you give an answer and I'm like, oh, good shout. And then Liz is like, oh, I think this. And I'm like, how did I miss that? So it's a great bit. It creates a really engaging feeling.
Oh, I mean, look, it's funny. We have had feedback from other ones, our mates who, are involved in punditry and things, that they are arguing back with us, which is always a good sign, right? Like when you feel like we have opened this conversation.
How could you have selected her?
Yeah, that they're joining it in at home. Obviously, we can't hear it. Chelsea Semple, formerly Ali, was telling me that she was cleaning up the house and having an argument with us both. I said, that's good, Chelsea. I've yelled at you on the panel on TV for years.
Yes.
So just doing the favor.
You haven't noticed me yelling at you in my car, but it may or may not.
We have. I can tease you a little bit. I know we are trying to assemble a roundtable of women's rugby brains for the end of the Aupiki season. So that will be a kind of crossover event where we'll get not just Les and I's opinion, but at least another 3 excellent commentators of the game. So we're looking forward to trying to organize that madness, because as you know, it's hard enough to keep 2 people on topic, let alone potentially 5.
Well, now that you say that, I'm about to go completely off script, because
beautiful.
On your show this week, you mentioned how people tend to think, oh, if you're not sure what you're doing, we're going to put you on the wing.
Mhm.
So I was very lucky to interview Philippa Tuddiett a couple of years ago, and I asked her about her sort of rugby origin story, and it was the same one you always hear. She's in college. She sees a sign that says, "Would you like free beer? Come to the field and bring sneakers." And she shows up, and she's trying to look cool. I was like, "Oh yeah, I've played this before." And they say, "Okay, well, what do you play?" And she said, I play out wide." And they were
Yeah.
like, "So you're a winger?" Yeah, I'm a winger. I'm a winger.
That's how they get you. Like you never turn up at a field, and even if you say, "Oh, I don't have any boots," someone will. The mistake you make is turning up, because once you're there.
Okay, well, as you know, this weekend marked the midway point for Super Rugby Aupiki. Neither of the matches this weekend was particularly close, and I know it's been a bit of a horror show for your Hurricanes. I'm sorry, is it Pua? Please
You're
let me get it
doing,
right.
you know what? You're doing beautiful on the pronunciation, David, because firstly, congratulations, Aupiki. So the AU sound
You
into
corrected me
the
on
old
that.
Māori.
I was saying
Yeah.
Aupiki, so.
Yeah, so the AU sound in Te Reo Māori is an O sound. So yep, Aupiki is what we're dealing with there. Paua is, from what my understanding is, that's like actually the central pillar in a marae. So po is like a pillar, and so Paua is how we're doing it. So yeah, it's almost like power, but Paua is
Oh, okay.
how we're saying it. And you know what? Good to ask, because I've heard all types of pronunciations, even here. And I'm like, what are we doing? So, yep, Hurricanes, Paua. They're my home team, unfortunately, because yes, they have been giving me a lot of headaches, perhaps predictably, given that if you look at things
I didn't think
like...
they were going to be 0-3. I didn't think it was. I
Uh,
didn't think they were going to win, but I didn't think they were going to be 0-3.
I don't think I have predicted to Les in our... So I say we take it out of the DMs. We do still have sidebar chats. I don't think I have predicted to her once that we were going to win, but I was definitely predicting that some of these matches would be closer.
For sure.
I think the reality is, and that's what we really dug into this week, was putting some of that context back in, because Super Rugby is attached to an idea and a level and a branding here in Aotearoa, but the reality and the experience behind the scenes of that is not quite what you would expect from a super experience. So when that comes to the Hurricanes Paua, we have the fewest amount of contracted Black Ferns. Now, what that means is the fewest amount of full-time rugby players, because while Super Rugby Aupiki is professional, now if you're listening to this, you can't hear my fingers doing the quote marks, but it is
something happening.
it is professional. But what that actually means is they're in camp only 4 days a week, so they're only training together once a week before they play in the weekend. And with that, obviously means less time together. If you are not a professional athlete, you're at your job on the other couple of days a week. So these type of things are at a disadvantage. Won't use it as an excuse, though, because there's some fundamentals that, like, just catch a ball. As I was watching with my beautiful friend on the weekend who really watches rugby, they're not a sports person at all, and they said to me, I do feel like expecting to catch is maybe something you could predict if you were on the field.
Ooh. That is scathing.
Oh, yes. So, yes. No, in the weekend, it was a top-of-the-table clash between the Blues and Matatu. The Blues being the team that is based out of our biggest city in Auckland and last year's champions, versus Matatu, who are the representative team of the South Island. If you've watched the men's game, they are actually the amalgam of both the Highlanders and the Crusaders franchise.
Oh, okay.
They operate out of the Crusaders hub, though, in Christchurch. And look, that game... an interesting one. I think it was 7 points at the half, but in the end, the Blues ended up running away with it. The Blues are an embarrassment of riches in terms of all their attacking options at the moment. Like, they, have had Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe come back and is now playing centre because they need all their amazing wingers on the field at the same time. Caitlin Vahakolo, Jamie Colosi,
I have to
unreal.
interject because you and Liz have been beating the please don't retire Portia drum, and I'm just wondering, is there any room on your bandwagon for me to hop on? Like,
100%. We've jokingly said we're going to have to add a segment which is just giving Portia compliments
Yes.
episode to
You
try and
should have
convince him to
call-ins and
come
just
back.
do like a montage.
Yeah,
Please,
maybe I'll
please.
put that up on the chat this week. It's like, send us your voice note making your case for why Portia should play in the next World Cup. She doesn't. I feel like her answer on that is getting wigglier by the day. It's like a loose tooth, and she's playing with her tongue because she
Yep.
keeps on. Her line on it initially, because I was in her retirement press conference, was absolutely no way, no black jerseys. It's only domestic.
And
from
she said,
here
"I
on
don't want to
out."
be one of those people who retires, then unretires, then
Yeah.
But
She
that just
was.
made it harder for her to hem and haw. Now I'm like, that's why she hasn't changed her
She's
mind.
having too much fun.
Yeah.
Like, the reality is I think she forgot how fun 15s is, because she hadn't played 15s. Like, yeah, she was in the last World Cup, but her lead into that was a little bit open, but it was mainly playing sevens, right? So
Yeah.
the travel demands are a huge part of it, and just the physical demands on training loading to be a sevens player are at a higher standard than it is for 15s. At 15s, if you're an international 15s player, you're actually only overseas for kind of 2 trips
That's a great
year.
point.
And so it's quite a different commitment in terms of your personal life, as well
Sevens is
as
definitely a young person's game. You have to be free to go anywhere at any time.
Yeah, and as Les pointed out on the pod last week, Portia didn't get to play in the World Cup final. She was
Right.
knocked out in the early, and
Yeah.
so she has unfinished business, which is what we try to tell her, because we really want her to come back.
Well, a couple of weekends ago, I had this very theory that I was like, she should realize this is 3 times as much fun as sevens, because she gets to truck 3 people at a time, whereas in sevens, there's usually only one person that she's throwing to the ground.
I mean, honestly, like I say, she's not looking like a retiring person. That's all I have to say, and in the wider context of the thing, if she's not, we need to be prioritizing other players around her to be maximizing minutes, because it's not like, as much as we all enjoy watching Portia play, Aupiki is still should be the preparation space for our Black Ferns team, and so priorities in terms of minutes should be given to people that are trying to pursue that space.
Well, looking quickly at the table, the Blues are unbeaten on top. Matatu are second. Chiefs Manawa are third, and your team is seated at the bottom, unable to get even a losing bonus point.
Yep.
If you were their coach, what would you have been saying in the locker room after that game this weekend?
I would be saying that right now our biggest opposition is ourselves, because in the opening 20, in the opening first half, they had more than 75% possession and no points. And if you looked at the handling error in the opening 10 minutes, they had 3. By 15 minutes, they had 6 handling errors. I can
just picture you tearing your hair out and
I was
stomping around the living room.
pacing around. Thankfully, my friend was there to watch the first game with me, not the second one, because I was not fun to be around for that.
I thought you were going to say, fortunately, they were there to throw buckets of ice water on you every now and then.
No, I was just stewing on my own. So, like, I think it would be that. It would be like a case of, okay, I think we need to start looking more within, actually, around what we're up to. I think it's going to be great that we're playing Matatu this weekend, because there is a history and a rivalry between the Paua and Matatu. Matatu only beat the Paua for the first time last year. So up until then, they had a 100% win record against them. And it was after an amount of turmoil. They had chosen to use the haka as a haka should be used, and they laid down a challenge at the beginning of last season and were thrown in the middle of a political storm as a result.
I remember this, but it was hard to get accurate coverage of what was actually happening.
Yeah. So for those, without going on too much of a garden path here, for those that are not aware, there has been a right-wing government that has been in charge of New Zealand for the last couple of years. Part of their agenda has been really dismantling a lot of the gains that have been made for our Indigenous population, the Māori population. And one of the things that they had conceded to one of their, because our government's, there's not just one party in there by themselves, they have to make a little team. And one of the things they had conceded to their teammates was to review what is essentially our constitution, which is Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi that was signed between the Crown, the British Crown, and the Māori people. And so this was all kind of the backdrop. The season starts, a haka is performed. Well, if a bunch of strong wahine Māori are going to perform a haka, they are going to talk about things that impact them. And so they made reference to this agenda from this government, and they
Yep.
made reference to standing up for their people. And that is apparently unacceptable. And there is a big thing to unpack here around the way in which rugby has taken parts of Māori culture, but has not necessarily embraced Māori around that.
Yep.
And that's another whole longer conversation. Probably similar echoes, I would imagine, if you're an American sports fan, to the situation around taking the knee during the anthem. Similar sentiments behind this. Anyway, I say all of that because this setting led up to one of the most high pressure matches for them last year, which was when they played Matatu after that, after their opening game. And they were playing them at home, and everybody was coming at them from all angles. And they managed to come together, and they won that game. And it was such a plucky win. They won in the last couple of minutes. And it was when their back was against the wall and everyone was coming for them. So I would ask them to dig back into that type of mindset, because they've got that there, and bring that out this weekend, because they're in the same position. Their back's against the wall. Everyone's coming for them. Everyone's written them off, and they're playing Matatu. So if they're going to have a chance at redeeming themselves this season, that's got to be it. That's got to be the target they're aiming for.
This was a great locker room speech. I'm fired up now.
There you go.
So I don't want to only talk about the Hurricanes, but this week on your show, you and Liz were talking, and I think it was her, I'm paraphrasing, obviously. She basically said that the Hurricanes' problems are too many to just kind of nail down. But if I handed you a magic wand and you could solve one issue at the moment, what would you prioritize? What would you fix for your Hurricanes? And I wrote something down on a piece of paper, and I want to see if I'm right.
I put glue on their hands, and before they leave the
handling.
Yeah. I would spray all their hands as they run out the tunnel. For goodness sake, hold on to that ball. Hold on to that ball. Your territory is gorgeous. Their stat is the worst one across the competition, and the one that kills me is 22 entries to conversion. 22 obviously being the magic part of the rugby field. That's where you get in there. You should be converting into points, whether that's kicking a penalty or tries. Their conversion entries into points is abysmal. And so what that tells you is you're getting there. You just got to hold your nerve, hold the ball, get over the line.
It's weird. They looked like you said, they looked really good, and then it's always the final thing. And I think I think I was with you that they must have left maybe 3 scores out in the field. And
that's what kills you, because you're like, you are almost there. Please just do 2 good things in a row, not just one.
Well, you might do 7 faces that are good, but the
last one, the last pass.
On it's like when something's lost, it's always the last place you look. But so they wait to the last minute. Anyway, I don't think that's happened. On a more positive note, who are some of the players on the POA who've impressed you this year, and maybe who are some of the youngsters you see kind of rising up and making a mark in the next few years?
Yeah, well, so we are big fans on the pod. Well, I mean, we were last season. Les and I joked about how we were president and secretary of the Eleanor Plum King fan club. She's a great 7. She's a lot quicker than your typical flanker is, but she works. You look at her stats every week in terms of her number of tackles made, her ruck arrivals, but also her running meters. She's second only, I think, in terms of defenders beaten to Portia Woodman. She's right up there in terms of defender beating in the top 10 carries, meters gained. She's the only forward in the top 10 in this competition at the moment. So her stats are incredible. She is probably going to be one. We just had the announcement here yesterday of a number of New Zealand Sevens players who have made themselves available. Now, she's probably the one that might be the casualty of that, because she will debut for New Zealand. It's just a matter of when. And so, unfortunately for her, that list has just got longer in her position. But she has been making a heck of a case for herself. I mean, she's the one within the POA setup, but there's been fantastic, emergence across other teams. Vaisinia Mahutariki Whakalilo, who is the tight head prop in Manawa. Now, the Chiefs Manawa have all the Black Ferns props, it seems. They've got Tanya Kolonavale, Santor Taumata, Crystal Murray, Kate Henwood, and Luke O'Connor, who's obviously a hooker, Grace Hopapa Barrett, who's also a hooker and a former New Zealand player. all of these players, all these front rowers are there. And then it's young Vasinia who has got the start in the first 2 games. And we were like, what the heck is this? But no, more than earned. Like her impact at tight head, fantastic. I would say she's probably to my mind, the strongest tight head in this country at the moment. She's going to be a bolt of the Black Ferns. I will be entirely unsurprised when I see her run out at the World Cup. So Vasinia, she's one to watch. The other ones, in terms of like maybe next couple of years, there's been a really interesting development in the fullback space. I wrote the other week, and I really hope it isn't the case, that I really hope that Renee Holmes hasn't suffered from the early promotion curse. We had this at the last World Cup. Les, my co-host, Les Elder, was a poster girl. They put her on all of them, and then she didn't make the team. They did the same with Chelsea Semple, had her in a couple of the photo shoots, then she didn't make the team. Renee Holmes was flown out to England last year to be in the promotional videos, but she's been quiet so far at the beginning of this year. And as she's been quiet, there's been a lot of noise coming out of Matatu and the Blues with up at the Blues, young Braxton Sorensen McGee. I think she's all of maybe 19 years old, something like that. She'd been playing in the Auckland Storm while she was still at school, high school, but has now made her way into the Blues setup. Now she's in there at starting fullback, and this is a backline that has Sylvia Brunt, Rua Haidemont, Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe, Caitlin Vahakolo, Patricia Malepo, Jamie Colossi. Like, she's in there and she's looking the goods. So fantastic young player there. But also down in Matatu, you've got Kaya Nepia. Now, Kaya, I believe, is actually Liam Messham's niece, which is why she played for Waikato, because originally I think she's actually from the Bay. I'm pretty sure Les will claim that. But she played for Waikato in the FPC. They won the FPC last year, and she was a fantastic piece of that puzzle. And so she's been scooped up, picked up by Whitney Hansen, brought down there, doing fantastic things for them at fullback. They would have planned for their starting fullback to be Shay Robbins-Reti, who has played for them for a number of years, played for New Zealand, 7s, 15s. But it's been this young one, Kaya Nepia, who's come away with it, and she is the top in terms of meters gamed at the moment. And before this season, I don't know how many people would have known her name. So she will be included again. Not sure it will be this year, just because the competition is so hot in the outside back position, but she is definitely a player to watch for the future.
Do you see the table changing much over the final 3 rounds, or do we already kind of know who the finalists will be? By the way, the weird thing about Matatu being second, like if you look at their points differential, it's like 7.
Yeah.
I think they've scored 60 and given up 67. The Manawa, it's much bigger. It like if you looked at those stats separately, you'd think it was reversed.
Yes. They win big, lose big. No, yeah, Matatu. They're a grinder team. Like that's kind of their whole their style of play though as well. We talk about it. It's less of the razzle dazzle across there. They just work hard, And I would say the most interesting battle, and what we call it round 4, but in my mind this is kind of like the second round, because we played everyone once. Now we're playing everyone again. The main thing to keep eyes on in the second round, because in Aupiki it's 1 and 2 go through, so there's no semi-final. I think the main contention is going to be between Matatu and Manawa, because they are, Manawa is behind, but not by much. No. Because yes, when you're talking about those points differentials, etc., the points differentials are good, but they did lose their games, but they still picked up bonus points in those losses, which has really kept them in the mix. I think they're 2 points now behind Matatu, and so all that needs is a game this weekend against the Blues, and how they go there, and the game against Matatu. They will be targeting that match, because that game, the one that will eventually be played between Manawa and Matatu, could end up determining who ends up making that final.
That kind of makes it exciting, though. I like that there's a race. Like, nobody's going to catch the Blues. There's only 3 chances left, and I think it might even be mathematically impossible. I haven't tried to work it out, but I like the idea of this race for second between 2 teams who are pretty close. I like that.
This is often the case in New Zealand competitions. Like, it kind of replicates from club up. There's often like very clear front runners, very clear work-ons, let's say, and it's always the meet in the middle, which is where things get more exciting. So that is going to be the M&M show. So Matatu Manawa, that's going to be the place to watch.
So There's a lot of women's rugby coming down the pike. The PWR just finished. Did you pay any attention at all to that competition? Did you catch the
And
final in some way?
in the periphery, to be
Yeah.
honest, there's been too like, look, I love rugby. I don't love watching it that much. I got other things going on in my life, David. So I let other
Wow,
people
I feel
specialize.
seen.
But I feel like there's more than enough. I'm always like, okay, I got limited hours in the day. Who is digging in and giving this the love it deserves? PWI's definitely got that. So I leave that in the safe hands of a number of people to unpack and
It's funny
take a
because
look at things
I
there.
heard a lot of English people complaining that New Zealanders don't know anything about European rugby, and it seemed very like meh.
I
I was
mean,
like, it's a two-way street, folks.
yeah. And look, I would say also, like, I don't really need to know. Like, I know it's happening. I know it's happening over there. Look, I probably should have watched it in terms of prep to the thing, but I don't know. Games are in the middle of the night. By the time they come on, I already
Yeah.
know what's happened. It's hard to be excited when you know the outcome. There were definitely a couple that I watched. Like I did watch Alona Ma in her debut just because I thought it was interesting.
I actually cut out the whole segment on Alona Mar because I think I'm a little
Just sick of
Mar
it.
out.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I watched, I because I was interested, because obviously there was so much hype around her transition back into 15s. I
Right.
was just interested to see how she was going to run. Because that's, gosh, man, all eyes on you type of thing. But she did well. And so then I was kind of like, oh yeah, let them continue to get on with it. Yeah, like I say, got more than enough to be focusing
Totally
on
fair.
down here. So
But in the near future, we do, of course, have a World Cup coming. How did that happen? That seems bizarre. Super W is happening right now. The Sevens are headed back to Hong Kong. The WER, our new pro league here in the States, kicks off this weekend. Two questions. One is, what are you most looking forward to for the women's game in the upcoming months? And I'm going to save the second question for a minute.
Okay, well, because it's the one that's not on your list, but the Pacific 4 series.
Yes.
Because for us, that is going to be the big one. Now, like I say, the announcement that dropped here yesterday and has, I was making the joke to Les, it's like an episode of Love Island where a new bombshell has entered the villa, which is all of the Sevens players who have suddenly arrived and got an open invitation into the Black Ferns camp. So that has now put a real cat among the pigeons. Like
Wow.
it's going off in terms of what this is going to mean in key positions and in World Cup prep. So we have 7 players that have put themselves forward. From what I understand, all bar 2 of them are going to be in the first camp that will be held just after Aupiki. So there's one in early April, and then the other 2 come back in after LA Sevens. That's going to be Stacey Walker and Georgia Miller. So that they should be available for probably later on in the prep of Pacific 4. That, though, starts to be really interesting because Pacific 4 is going to be one of the audition spaces, really, for who is going to be pushing for key spots on that roster. The embarrassment of riches that New Zealand rugby always has on outside backs and on the back of the scrum, like the edges is where everyone likes to play. So we've got already through the weeks of Aupiki have had so many people put their hand up to play flanker. I talked about Eleanor Plumkin, but you've also Kennedy Tukuafu, formerly Simons, is in the best playing shape I've seen her in quite some time. She's ripping it up. I think she got 7 turnovers in 2 games, like unreal stuff. She's fired up. She's ready to go because she knows she's got to hold them off because, Eleanor Plumkin's making a play. Layla Sa'i, Kaipo Olsen-Baker, Liana Mikieli-Tu'u, Lucy Jenkins. But now in the mix comes Dice Faliafanga over from the Sevens. I understand Georgia Miller is interested in a forwards position, so maybe she's trying to emulate Sarah Hirini and look at playing as a flanker.
Really?
So that starts getting really competitive for that position there. Then you look at the back 3, and again, like, good luck. And I think that will be an interesting tell about how strong our 15s program has got between the last World Cup and this one, because I think for the first time, it's going to be a case of actually the 15s talent we've got in there right now, it's going to be hard to budge because we've got Caitlin Vahakolo, but also Aisha Letiinga, who are playing phenomenally. I think the only only Sevens player who could potentially look at moving them would be Portia Woodman-Whitcliffe. But as we know, she's yet to commit.
I should have brought a drum. So
like an ear horn every time Portia's mentioned. But,
by the way, sorry to interrupt, but Caitlin Vahakolo, have you heard an update? She got a pretty bad knock this weekend.
I mean, I've seen in her social media that she's been in the gym, so that seems all right. But look, like I say, team lists come out this afternoon. That's also when we get the injury list at the same time. So unfortunately, can't give you the update outside of that. But she replied to something I can't even remember this week. So she is alive. We know that much.
Glad to hear that.
Yes,
by the way, I've joked with other people about the Pacific Four. It's like when they were conceiving of what to call this, they were like, well, these teams are nowhere near each other and have nothing to do with each other. Is there something that's touching all of them?
Yeah.
It's like they could have called it the Oxygen Four or like the Crust of the Earth Four.
It's a bit of a stretch, but we'll take it.
But I love it anyway.
But yes, so that, like I say, the competition that will be coming in there is going to be really interesting. The other one I think just worth mentioning is like Reese Podey-Lane, who obviously has captained the Blackfern Sevens in the past, looking at putting her hand up for halfback, and that could be really interesting for us because while Maya Joseph is coming along leaps and bounds, she's still very green, and the type of metal in terms of just having been forged now in many campaigns to be able to hold nerve and pressure positions and make the right call. Reese is going to be a huge asset if she comes across and successfully takes that 9 jersey. So those type of things really have leveled up, I think, the situation for the Black Ferns title defense. I know there'll be a lot of chat going on in England at the moment. They tend to talk a bit of smack and say, oh, you can't win it without your Sevens players. And to that I say, well, you pull them over. Is Ali Kildun not a Sevens player? Is Meg Jones not a Sevens player? Like this whole thing of like, everybody does it. Everybody does it.
They can say, no, that's the GB Sevens. That's not
Don't be mad that our Sevens players are better. Like, what are you going to... If you had superstars, if they had more superstars, don't tell me they wouldn't use them. Like everybody is going to use the maximum talent that they have. If you want to have a conversation with me about how we need to stop putting 7s and 15s at odds and other ways, like I just saw in your part of the world, there's a test match scheduled between USA and Canada the same weekend as LA Sevens. What's that all about? In terms of let's work together, not try and pull people apart. Like,
don't get me started.
So, I mean, there's a wider conversation we need to have about, like, we need to have the real conversation here, which is, are we working together or at odds of each other? Because we act like these two identities are very separate. They may have been when it came to men's rugby. They are not at all when it comes to women's rugby. They are one team, one dream, just like Canada's been operating it to the best success. So I think everybody needs to catch up to that ideology and really start planning their whole calendar, which isn't just looking at one format. It's all of the formats, So Pac 4, I can't wait. I'm excited to see how Canada is shaping up. Like, that's the other thing too, right? Like, they knocked us over last year. There'll be revenge. I know, hungry for it within that Black Fern setup. USA are going to be so interesting to watch. This will be the first time that you hate me to say it, I'm going to say it. It'll be the first time that people in this part of the world get to see Alona Ma playing the longer format of the game if she gets picked up in that squad. So if she gets picked up in that squad, that'll be interesting to see. Then you have obviously Australia, and again, if we're talking about that Sevens clash, Maddie Levi's Charlotte Caslick, Shani Williams, who has done that before and is a great 15s player. This suddenly we might have, we've seen and we love to see in the Sevens circuit, Maddie Levi and Charlotte Caslick versus Reese Podey-Lane and Georgia Miller. And now you might get it in the 15s game too. So you get it for longer. How good's that going to be?
Well, the second part of that question is much wider. Like, the state of the women's game now, you and I have been talking for a while now. When we see new competitions sprouting up, seeing a pro league here in the United States, are these things a testament to the influence of things like the World Cup in New Zealand and the Olympics in Paris. When there are these big moments, like Ruby Tui leading a packed stadium in song after one of the best games I've ever watched, like Michelle Kang pledging millions of dollars after the Eagles got their first ever medal in the Olympic sevens. At those times, we all say, okay, that's it. There's going to be a ripple effect. There's going to be a knock-on effect. This is the moment. This is the spark. Has that happened?
I mean, not quick enough. But I think that if you look at that, like rugby in this part of the world is very conservative. I think it is probably in others too, but particularly here because it's such an institution. You think about like when organizations get to a certain size, they seem to lose any type of ability to be agile, to be innovative, to be able to respond to the moment. And I think that that's the case in terms of New Zealand rugby here. We have to remember that in our country, like it is rugby and then it is everything else. And so like that rigidity, like because there is so much cultural capital attached to the sport, they are very hesitant to make any great moves. And so I just don't think they were ever really prepared for what the last World Cup was. I was explaining this to someone actually this morning around in the context of when I used to work in politics, and if you run a field campaign in terms of taking people from the beginning to the end of that, the first phase is around building your base and having to get them really strong so that they carry you for the rest of it. So you have to build your base. Then the next phase is around getting those soft votes from other places. So who are the low hanging fruit who you can convince to join your cause? And then that third place is going, balls to the wall, and that's when you turn people out. Now, what we had at the World Cup that was here is we did really well at the soft turn and the get people out, but we'd never built that foundation in terms of building that base.
Wow.
We hadn't really, because and that's going to be the difference between our World Cup and where it takes our game afterwards versus England's World Cup and where this takes them. Because what they have done since 2010, really, since the last time they hosted that World Cup, they have been very intent on building their base. And so they've got something really stable to stand on. So when they do, they're going to take off. It's going to be more similar to what we saw in this part of the world during the FIFA Women's World Cup, with how Australia and how things tipped for the Matildas, because the reality is that the Matildas had done that. They had built that base nice and strong so that when people came in, there was a party to join. The problem with ours is we were a pop-up, not a pub. And that's going to be the difference over in England, is they are a pub, not a pop-up. And so when people turn up, they're going to know where to come back to once the party leaves.
Wow. That is a great analogy and such a great point. I love that. I'm looking at the time. I've got to let you go, but I have to give you this final bit. So talked to a friend of mine, Rugby Julia, this weekend. I asked her this question. I promised her I would ask you the exact same question. So,
okay.
As I mentioned, the WER kicks off this weekend. My city has a team, my Banshees. They're going to be playing their first 2 home games at the same venue where my New England Free Jacks play.
Okay.
As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, double headers. Why not do double headers? And then I kind of answered my own question. Like, wait a sec. They probably are specifically avoiding double headers because they can't become the kid sister of MLR. On the other hand, you want butts in seats, right? You want eyes on the product, and that's how you grow. So if you're playing at a place where there's already a bunch of people there who are there for the day to watch rugby, isn't that better? And I look at Aupiki and I see them leaning pretty heavily into double headers. What is the right answer? And does that answer really depend on what country you're in?
Double headers just reveal the double standard in fan experience. I hate them.
Okay.
I hate them. Every time I go to an Aupiki game that's a double, I cannot wait because this weekend we get to have a standalone, not a double header. The double header was horrible. The last one I went to. I went there
on the broadcast. You do a good job because like the Blues came out and watched the second game and they're cheering and it looks like it's all fun.
Let me talk you through the fan experience of that. So for me, I walk up to the stands. I go through the gate. The first thing I see is the merch stand. I'm faced with like 6 different options of men's merch, 1 option for women, maybe a hoodie as well. So 2. So immediately I'm faced with that inequity there. I come into the stadium because it's the men's home. It's massive. which means that I am always going to feel like there's not enough people there. And so instead of creating a vibe in that space, it's echoey. It might look good on TV, it feels shit in reality. Then after the game, well, at the end of the game, last 20 minutes, that's when the men's fans start to arrive. And so I have to watch the most important part of the game is people saying, excuse me, and trying to come sit in their seat. Then when it comes to the end of the game, I'm actually not interested in spending time around men's rugby fans. It's toxic. A lot of those guys don't make me or my friends feel safe. You know, I was there with a non-binary friend of mine. I would never take that friend to a men's rugby game because I can't ensure that they're safe. I can take them to a women's game and I know we'll have no worries. I cannot take them to a men's game. So we pack up to go at the end of the game. The energy that is attached between these two audiences, alcohol is so much more prolific amongst the men's crowd. It's a lot more of a younger party demographic than, say, the people that are there at a women's game. It's fans and family. So it's a different energy that's attached to them too. So we're packing up, we're going, we leave. And then I am face to face with the stark reality of how many thousands of people are streaming in who got my ticket for free and couldn't be bothered turning up. So yes, if we're talking about those phases like I just did, the build the base, the convert the, low-hanging fruit to this, you're the low-hanging fruit, David. I'll come for you once I've built my base, But reality is you're probably part of my base too, mate, because you're going to turn up to that game on its own as well as if they were together.
Right.
Whereas I don't need to trick anyone to love my sport. It's worth it on its own. I don't need to offer it for free. I can sell it to you because it's good enough. So don't sell us out. It's not about trying to slice one slice of pie out thinner and thinner. It's about baking a whole nother one. There's the stats that came out of that last World Cup. I can't remember what the percentage is, but it was significant number of people that attended the World Cup final had never watched rugby before. And they weren't interested in men's rugby. They were interested in women's rugby because it offers something different. And so we need to be excited about that. The potential of audience that can grow and that is unique. And yes, there will be, a Venn diagram where there is the overlap, but that those cultures and those environments are different and we should celebrate that.
That is absolutely brilliant. I feel like I now have the answer. And I was worried that at the end of the day I was going to feel like, well, horses for courses. And
no, you look at what
right.
England did. Right. Like you look at what England did. I was there in 2018. They had been trying to limp along with the double headers for years. So let's put this in context. In 2010, the last time they held the World Cup, they could only sell the Stoop for the final. So that's, not major capacity there. In 2018, they made the choice. Six Nations, we're not doing double headers at Twickenham anymore. They were giving it away. They were opening gates after the men's game. Say, oh, please come along. Because then we're saying, please, if you're not doing anything, we're not selling the excitement. We're not selling the story. We're saying, oh, if you please look at us. It's not a charity case out here. It's an entertainment product. So let's sell it like that. So they took it out of that space, said no, took it into the regions where people were excited to see England play test rugby. They didn't care whether it was men or women. They put it on at family-friendly times and they held that space and they sold them out. I went up to Doncaster the first time they played there and they sold out that stadium, 2 p.m. on a Saturday for £10, you and your kid. And it was a great environment. And they've continued to build that now so that they have built that base. So they came back to Twickenham and they could sell out a decent number of tickets. And they got it to the point where people understood the value of the product itself. Right. They didn't have to be tricked into loving it. I don't have to trick anyone. Just let me talk to them for 5 minutes. It's good enough. Don't trick.
When I first went on and started looking for the tickets for the Boston Banshees, I was like, oh, they're at least as much as Free Jacks tickets, maybe a tiny bit more. And then I was like, yeah, good.
Yeah,
I'm going, and let me buy a hoodie now too.
That's the one. I mean, and that's the thing people often say to me, because I can get tickets for free now in terms of like media passes, right? So I can get it. I am accredited technically for Super Rugby Aupiki, but I still bought my POA membership because it's actually an exciting thing for me to be able to buy tickets. It hasn't been that long that I have actually been able to buy tickets, not just for the Black Ferns. I can't begin to tell you how recently, it would blow your mind how recently it is that I've been able to buy tickets to Black Ferns games now that they're no longer playing them at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. So buying tickets for a Black Ferns game, but also buying them for my province. I still can't do it for my old team, the Wellington Pride. So I am so stoked to be able to do it for the Poa. And I've been a foundation member, even though, again, my franchise gifted me. I was number 4 on their foundation members, but I still pay for my membership every year because it means something for me to be able to put money into the women's pockets.
Yeah. Alice Soper, you are the best. You are absolutely brilliant. I really appreciate your time. I'm sorry I have to let you. I wish I could just stay all day. Like if I could just put aside 24 hours to talk to you, then it would be a very, very good day for me. Can you tease a little bit about what's coming up on Full Credit and where people can best find you? I think we've skipped over where people should be looking for you.
Oh, yes. So Full Credit, Instagram's probably the easiest place to find us in the first instance. So Full Credit Pod is what we are there. Or you can find it via me. I'm Alice Soapbox on literally every platform, except not X anymore. And I think I did give you a little tease at the beginning. At the end of this season, we've been having our conversation, and that's been sparking other ones. So we want to try and bring all these women together to have a real talk about the state of play. And I think that that's going to be really interesting. And that's the thing that excites us. And as you well know, that's the advantage of podcasts as a format, is nobody knows what it's supposed to look like, and you can change it to be more responsive, that agility that we spoke about before. You can react to the thing of the day. So I'm stoked to say that, the 3 people we hit up have all said yes. So now it's just about pulling that group together. And if you really want to know what's going on in, Aotearoa women's rugby, that's going to be the episode to listen to. That will be coming out around the Easter weekend, because that'll be by the time our final is wrapped up and our crossover final with Super W, which we didn't even talk about. But hey, that's a reason to bring me back.
Oh, yeah. I've got several. I'm writing them down. They're on my little handling note. Alice Soper, thank you so much for your time. I gotta let you go. I can't wait to hear the next episode. I can't wait till we find a reason to chat again. You're the absolute best. Cheers. Talk to you soon. And be well.
Thanks.
It gives me great pleasure to be here today.
No, it doesn't. You want to tempt the wrath of the whatever from high atop the thing?